pocket right now might be a government spying device, according to a stunning article from The Guardian in the UK. The story says a top-secret court order is forcing Verizon to turn over all phone records for calls made in the U.S. to the National Security Agency, and not just calls made to overseas numbers. When you call grandma in Nebraska, the NSA knows. This is a wide, indiscriminate net. They're not even looking for someone specific. When a call is made, Verizon turns over this information: the phone number, phone serial numbers, the location the call comes from, the time of the call, the duration of the call, and all the same information for the person on the other end of the phone, even if they're not a Verizon customer. And if you move from one tower range to another, you can be tracked. Pretty much everything about the call, except what's actually being said, is turned over under the order from the secret Foreign Intelligence Service, or FISA, court. Given that, it would not take much to figure out who you are. Without exactly confirming or denying the FISA order, Deputy White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest defended the idea behind it today. The information of the sort described in the article has been a critical tool, he said, in protecting the nation from terror threats. This order reportedly extends from April 25th to July 19th, but it seems to be just a continuation of a court order that's been going on for 7 years, one Congress has known all about. The Republican chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence today called it a vital tool.
Within the last few years, this program was used to stop a stop a terrorist attack in the United States. We know that. It's important. It fills in a little seam that we have, and it's used to make sure that there is not an international nexus to any terrorism event that they may believe is ongoing in the United States. So in that regard, it is a very valuable thing.
And in all likelihood, this court order to Verizon is just the only one we know about. You know who would be really angry about this government snooping? A bright-eyed senator from Illinois, I remember, who was upset when a similar story about the NSA grabbing phone data from millions of Americans was reported during the Bush years. He said this in 2007.
I will provide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to track and take out the terrorists without undermining our Constitution and our freedom. That means no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens. No more national security letters to spy on citizens who are not suspected of a crime. No more tracking citizens who do nothing more than protest a misguided war.
So instead, let's track every citizen? One member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence who has been briefed on these practices and clearly upset, although until today we were not really sure what he was upset about because he could not tell us, is Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat from Oregon. On March 12th, about a month and a half before this current order was signed, Wyden seemed to be trying to get the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, to admit that this kind of NSA operation was going on.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly.
If the order uncovered by The Guardian is merely a renewal, as the chairwoman of the Senate Intelligence Committee today indicated, then shouldn't Clapper's answers have been yes and quite wittingly? Clapper's office today did not respond to a request for comment. Earlier, I had the chance to conduct the first TV interview with the reporter who broke this story wide open, Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian. Congratulations on the scoop. Explain for our viewers why this is important.
It's important because people have understood that the law that this was done under, which is the Patriot Act, enacted in the wake of 9/11, was a law that allowed the government very broad powers to get records about people with a lower level of suspicion than probable cause, the traditional standard. So it's always been assumed that under the Patriot Act, if the government had even any suspicion that you were involved in a crime or terrorism, they could get a lot of information about you. What this court order does that makes it so striking is that it's not directed at any individuals who they believe or have suspicion or committing crimes or are part of a terrorist organization. It's collecting the phone records of every single customer of Verizon Business and finding out every single call that they've made internationally and locally. So it's indiscriminate and it's sweeping. It's a government program designed to collect information about all Americans, not just people where they believe there's reason to think they've done anything wrong.
And based on my conversations with government officials today, it seems that this is basically just a continuation of what has been going on since the Bush administration introduced it in 2006, that even though the order runs from April 25th through July 19th of this specific court document that you obtained, that it's not specific to any particular crime or terrorist investigation. It is just a widespread continuation for this particular telecommunications organization. Is that your understanding as well?
When it was discovered that the Bush administration was collecting millions of telephone records of innocent Americans, it was in a massive controversy. And I think there was an assumption, at least among a lot of people, that the Obama administration was not continuing these programs. These were programs instituted and justified by the 9/11 attacks. And so this is the first evidence that more than a decade later, the government is still engaged in what until 10 years ago was considered unthinkable types of surveillance, a massive surveillance net over all people. And the problem is that this is all kept so completely secret. Why was this court order that we obtained marked top secret and closely guarded? It doesn't harm national security for us to know about it. We should have this debate in the open. Let the Obama administration talk about why they're collecting these records, whether it's part of a larger program, and then let's debate whether we as a society want to live with a government that knows everything that we're doing, regardless of whether we've done anything wrong.
Here's what a senior administration official said in response to your scoop. They wouldn't specifically confirm the court order, but they said, quote, information of the sort described in the Guardian article has been a critical tool in protecting the nation from terrorist threats to the United States, as it allows counterterrorism personnel to discover whether known or suspected terrorists have been in contact with other persons who may be engaged in terrorist activities, particularly people located inside the United States. What's your response?
Anytime that you report on anything that the government does in secret and they get caught doing things that Americans would be stunned to learn they're doing, it's almost like you just wind them up and they just yell the word to them and hope that if they say the word terrorist enough times, it'll scare people into accepting what it is that they've done. That's what that statement is. If what they're really doing is what they claim they're doing in that statement, which is targeting actual terrorists or people they suspect of terrorist activity, why aren't they going to the court and specifically naming those people and giving information to the court to let the court know that they're actually engaged in wrongdoing or there's reason to believe and monitoring them? Why is it that instead they are sweeping up everybody's phone records, millions and millions of people, that allow the government at any time access to those databases to, if they have political enemies, if there are people that the government dislikes for whatever reason, to have all kinds of leverage and power over them by knowing what it is they've done. If this were really a program directed at terrorists, we would have a much different conversation, but that's not what this is. This is indiscriminate and aimed at all Americans, not just ones who they call terrorists.
And as your article points out, Glenn, this is not the administration doing it on its own. Congress is briefed on it. There is a FISA court that is involved in it. In fact, you suggest in your article that Senators Ron Wyden and Mark Udall, these Democratic senators, have been warning the public perhaps about this. They wrote in a letter to the Attorney General back in March 2012 that they were specifically referring to documents sent to Congress in relation to the Patriot Act. Quote, these documents are so highly classified that most members of Congress do not have any staff who are cleared to read them. As a result, we can state with confidence that most of our colleagues in the House and Senate are unfamiliar with these documents, and that many of them would be surprised and angry to learn how the Patriot Act has been interpreted in secret. Do you think that they think that the members of Congress who are briefed on this stuff, on this classified material, do you think they think there is sufficient congressional oversight over programs like this one?
Absolutely not. I mean, and the example of these two senators is really remarkable and answers your question so perfectly. These are Democratic Party senators who are loyal to President Obama and to their party, who have spent years now saying, please listen to us. What the Obama administration is doing in interpreting the Patriot Act is so warped and distorted, and invest themselves with such extremist surveillance powers over the United States and American citizens, that Americans, in their words, would be stunned to learn what the Obama administration is doing. So you can have this procedure where you tell members of Congress, or a certain number of them, what it is that you're doing, but when you hamstring them and make it a crime for them to do anything about it, to talk about it in public, to introduce legislation about it, which is what has happened, to show their staffs what it is that is being done, you make this oversight, quote unquote, completely impotent. And you essentially annex these institutions. So you say, well, we've told them, they're involved, but you prevent them from doing anything about it. It's symbolic oversight only, and it's completely meaningless.
All right, Glenn Greenwald, columnist for The Guardian, congratulations on your scoop, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
Verizon is not commenting, but the company did send an email to employees underlining that the alleged order forced the company to comply. Also in national news, tragically,